Yep, I'll call this meeting to order. I'm Amy Baker, I'm the town clerk. Next to me is Nancy Stuppert, she's our town attorney. Joe Onzik is our finance director, and John King is one of our council members. We'll do a pledge and then we'll do a roll call real quick. Flags in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so many of you I don't know. In fact, I don't know any of you sitting at this table, so I'll just call your name and you can say whether you're present or not. Also, I want to note for the record, we have 4 out of a 7-person committee. We have 4 here in the room with us. We have 1 member appearing via Zoom up there on our screen, and 1 person traveling. Good morning. All right. So as I call your name, you can just say whether you're present. Deborah Dutton.
Present.
Present. Michael Hauser.
Here.
Jack
Leeson.
Leeson. Perfect. Barbara Puffer. She's by Zoom. Thank you. Mariana Sheely.
It's Marianne. Present.
Okay. Jeff Taylor.
Here.
And Brian Thomas is traveling, so.
So under Florida law, in order to allow a member of an appointed or an elected committee to participate by Zoom, there needs to be a vote from a quorum present, and the clerk has confirmed that we do have a quorum present of those members of the audit committee. With that said, generally it's for extraordinary circumstances. I can elaborate further on this, but it's basically to allow people to participate by Zoom in situations that arise. However, it's not really, the concern is that there could be some abuse of it, so that a member never ever comes and participates in person. So we do have Ms. Puffer. Do you want to share with the committee perhaps the reason that you're needing to participate by Zoom, and in the event it's health issues, you don't need to go into detail?
Sure. It's an old story. I live in Estero Cove, and I've been evacuated for some time. And my elevator is still not there, and I'm on the top floor. So right now I'm in Connecticut. I hope to be back within the month.
Okay.
We're getting close.
So
Old story.
that's okay. Having heard, is there a motion from anyone present to allow her participation by Zoom?
Yes.
Is there a second to the motion?
I can second.
Second. Is there any discussion of it? If not, if the clerk can call the roll.
Okay, on the motion to allow Ms. Puffer to appear via Zoom. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Hauser. Mike.
Hauser. All right, there's a motion from Michael Hauser and a second by Mariana Sheely. All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right, vote is 5. Excuse me?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
5-0 in favor of Ms. Puffer appearing via Zoom.
So you do have 6 members participating in today's meeting, 1 by Zoom, 5 present. My math is bad today. But the first order of business that you have, that you're required to do, is to appoint a chair and a vice chair, and that individual will assume the responsibility of conducting your meetings. So the floor is open for nominations for a chair.
Jeffrey looks like he can do it. Why not? Okay.
So you accept the nomination. Is there a second to the proposed nomination? Second.
No, second.
Okay. All right, so can we take a vote? All those in favor of having him as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Good.
Okay, so Jeff Taylor is our new chair of the Audit Committee.
Congratulations.
So I will turn over the responsibilities for the meeting to you, but with the guidance that your next order of business would be the nomination of a vice chair.
Okay, so we're looking for nominations for vice chair.
Yes.
Jack. Let's just
Why
keep it
not?
moving.
Do you accept?
Live and learn. Okay, I'll accept.
Okay. Second, anyone?
I can second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I just say something? Oh,
Okay, go on.
sorry. Real quick, until we have a transcriptionist that is off-site, she's actually in South Carolina, that listens to these meetings. You're all new faces. Until she gets to know who you are, can we just follow a vote or a nomination and a vote and all that with who made the motion, who made the second, and all that? Because
Okay.
our transcriptionist doesn't know faces yet, so.
Okay, so Michael Hauser Yep. made the motion to appoint Jack, and Jack, your last name is
Leeson,
Leeson.
Leson.
Jack Leeson as the vice chair. Marianne Shealy made the second. The vote was taken and all in favor was an aye,
Unanimous.
was unanimous.
Perfect, thank you.
Congratulations.
All right.
Okay. Next order of business is,
The approval of minutes, is that correct?
yes.
So the approval of minutes, it looks like May 24th and June 8th were the last minutes that were recorded. Is that correct?
We have September 12th.
September 12th. Okay, I'm reading September 12th. That's why I asked the question.
Okay.
Got it.
The one note on September 12th that I did have and I wanted to follow up on, at that particular point in time, they were still in the process of selecting an auditor. Is that correct? I think we did. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't see it in any of the previous, there was always conversation about it, always conversation
They
about it.
selected it, and I think they said they wanted to do it for like 2 or 3 years. So I know Joe's note said roll it for next year. I thought we already did that, did we not?
You could have earlier than the May minutes.
Okay.
I know audit didn't meet very often. The committee would have reviewed the bid process. And I think we've always had Mr. Sansberry as one of our auditors, and it's probably was more of a renewal discussion.
I think there was like 2 or 3 firms, and we
Okay.
went through them all, and they were,
Okay.
I think Barbara was on that call.
There were a couple of firms, and we did have discussion, and I think when you finally chose it, it was a subcommittee of this committee, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at the town website, I just didn't see anywhere that it said we selected it on this date and here's who was selected. So,
Okay. The committee would have just made a recommendation to council. Town council would have actually selected your auditing firm, so maybe that's where a little bit of the confusion's lying. I'm not sure. I haven't reviewed all the audit committee meeting minutes from, gosh, it's been quite some time now
A year.
since you've met.
yeah, over a year. Okay, so up on the docket is Monday, September 12th, meeting minutes. We're looking for an approval to approve these. Is that correct?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Is there anyone to?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, I didn't get the names, but
That's all
Oh.
right.
we moved.
Debbie Dunn moved to approve the minutes.
Okay. And then Michael seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Minutes are approved. To the public comment, for now, there's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. Open the floor to any public comment? No one? Okay. And then now we're into items for discussion. First up is the sunshine law by our town attorney.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Stuperidge. I'm an attorney with the Vos Law Firm. I work very closely with Becky Vos, who is the town attorney. I've been asked today to kind of give you an overview of the Sunshine Law. We did have materials that were presented to the town council at their Management and Policy Committee meeting on November the 7th. Those materials, I can tell you, are quite lengthy. We're not going to go through them in depth, but I strongly encourage you to download those from the website so you can have them. Today, my comments are just going to focus on the Sunshine Law, as well as I'm going to cover a little bit of public records, because I think that those are the ones that are going to be of most concern to you. However, that particular presentation will also go over portions of the ethics code, and you are going, as appointed members of this committee, you will be subject to the requirements of the ethics code as well. So how many of you are familiar with the Sunshine Law? It's Florida, so it's sunshine, right? Basically, yes, we've got a couple. So basically, it's open government, transparency. So the public has a right under Florida law to know what's going on in today's meeting. And you can see that there's various ways that we are recognizing that right that they have as we proceed. So it does provide the right of access to the public. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but this particular building is open. Any member of the public that would like to be here to provide comment, as we just went through our agenda, the door is open. They can come. The opportunity is limited to basically 3 minutes. And the reason for that is, should it be a very controversial item, or just a lot of public interest, perhaps, you could have the proverbial bus outside and have the room packed. And even in that situation, we do have an obligation to accommodate those, the members of the public as best as we can. And sometimes that requires setting up additional audio-visual materials so that they can see and also participate. We really fine-tuned that process during 2020 when we had the COVID issue, because again, as local governments, we had to operate. However, for public health reasons, it was not conducive to having a lot of people in the same room. And so we learned through that process. So I think we've got this public meetings down pretty good. So I'm going to talk about the fact that public meetings is where public business is transacted. So there may be a meeting somewhere else, perhaps some type of civic meeting or Girl Scout, Boy Scout, where you would not have a discussion of public business. And public business is quite broad. I mean, you are the Audit Committee, and generally it would be the topics that would be coming to you. So who is subject to? So it's basically any meeting, but it's 2 or more members of the same board. So you are an appointed board. The local planning agency is also an appointed board. So should you have a conversation with the local planning agency, they are not of the same board, so that would not, the sunshine issue would not arise in that situation. But those of you that are here, and I think we had one that was absent, so the conversation among yourselves should not transpire except during a public meeting. And what can you talk about? Well, you know, it's a small community, we're all friends, we're family, right? We went through a lot of difficult times together. We want to chit chat, we know each other, but it's only the topics that are foreseeable to come before this committee. So if you want to talk about football, if you want to talk about recipes or the holidays, things that are not going to come before this committee, you can do that because that's not really public business. Now, the term meetings, again, public meetings. Meetings is very broad. It can also mean town commission meetings. So if two of you are there and they're discussing your audit and you're sitting next to each other, there's this, an impulse to say, I didn't say that at the meeting, or they're misconstruing that, or something like that, that is really prohibited because it's two people. And you might think, well, we've already addressed that item. Well, it might come back to you on a motion for reconsideration, or it might come back to you at a future time. So you need to be careful of when you do go to other meetings and one of you guys, there's two of you together. That's really the key, 2 or more. As far as a best practice, what I like to recommend is that should two of you go to a meeting, have a third party present. Joe, council member, Amy, myself. And that way, if a member of the public suspects or alleges that, well, I saw 2 of the audit committee members, they were in that corner and they were talking, and I don't know what they were talking about, but I think they were going to talk about the audit. Having that third person there just makes it a little bit easier. And by the way, the Sunshine Law does not apply to the Florida legislature who did enact the law. Okay? Just so you know. So meeting, the definition of meeting, this is also inclusive of telephone calls and text messaging that you might be doing. So don't call each other. Again, you may be calling each other to talk about football or the holidays or something like that. In the event somebody knew that there was a telephone conversation, what will they do? Well, they'll subpoena basically your telephone records and they'll find out that there was conversation. And unfortunately, recently, within the last year or so in Sumter County, they had a finding of some Sunshine Law violations where there was numerous calls between 2 of the county commissioners. It just happened like right before meeting days, so it kind of raised some red flags, and that became a problem. So telephone calls, text messages, emails, and other written correspondence. Again, everything that you email back and forth, although you may delete it, it's still on that server and it's still discoverable in the event of some type of allegation. Informal discussions or deliberations. Maybe 2 of you want to discuss something that really doesn't rise to the level of, gosh, we don't want to have a meeting and call all 7 people here and set up the audio and everything. Can we just talk about this? The answer is no, because if it's something that's foreseeable to come before you, again, the Sunshine Law can come into effect. Also at meetings, these meetings are recorded, so everything we do here is visible by the public. So again, I discourage conversations kind of among ourselves, perhaps at breaks and things like that, because again, you could be talking about football, the holidays, but who knows, right? So under the law, there's basically 3 requirements. One is that the meeting has to be open to the public. Check, we've done that. There also has to be reasonable notice. Because of the fact that we're meeting here at the Mound House, we're meeting in a public building. Amy, your town clerk, she's responsible for getting the notices out, working with Joe. Do you want to talk about how your process works as far as noticing this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
How do you notice it?
Basically, Joe will provide to our office an agenda 7 days. In a perfect world, 7 days prior to the meeting, we will get this up on our website. We'll add it to our town calendar that there is going to be a meeting. The meeting includes what meeting is going to be sitting here at this table, where the meeting will be and what time it's going to be, so the public is well aware of anything we're doing. And like I said, in a perfect world, we try and get that out 7 days prior to the meeting. So this agenda would have been posted last Monday. That's our process. We don't have to advertise these in the sense of a newspaper advertisement or anything like that. That's only a little handful of meetings that we actually pay to advertise something. Most of it is just noticed, and noticing is on our website right now.
And there will be minutes taken of the meeting. That's the third requirement under the Sunshine Law. Earlier item on your agenda was the approval of the minutes. So after today's meeting, at your next meeting, you'll have a copy of the minutes again for approval. So I don't know that you have final decisions. I think that you make recommendations, and even though it's only a recommendation and not necessarily a final, the Sunshine Law still applies to you. So another practical application of the Sunshine Law is staff. Can we talk among ourselves? And the answer is yes. However, should Joe somehow, based on your rules, be appointed to serve as an ex officio, not an ex officio, a member of your committee or whatever, then he becomes one of you, and he would not be able to have that conversation with you. Otherwise, you are permitted to give him a call, to give me a call, to give Amy a call, and also our counselor here. You can call him because he's not a member of your board. He's sitting in today. However, you cannot use staff as a conduit, which means you can't call Joe. You can't call Joe and say, hey, Joe, I'm not sure about this. I'm thinking I want to vote for it, but what's everybody else going to vote for? How are they going to vote? And so you can't use him as kind of a go-around to find out what other members of your committee is doing. Through your day-to-day process, as you are in your professional roles, you might come across an article or a report or something that you want to share with everyone because you think it's very relevant to what's transpiring at your meeting. And so you get on your computer and you attach it as a file and you email it to all your council people or all your committee members. Technically, that's okay, but when there's a problem, the problem is if one of you were to respond back, then you have a conversation going on between two people via email. And the best practice is really to send it to staff and let staff send it out. And staff will sometimes copy, everyone, and you need to be sure that you don't hit reply all, because that can get you into trouble, because then you're voicing your opinion and it's going to all your members. So now we have communication and discussion about something that might foreseeably come before you. So that's the one word or one-way communication. Facebook. So as far as public meetings, Facebook is really not your friend. Because again, it's an opportunity for us to be friends, and Joe wanting to know what we're talking about becomes a friend, and now it's the two of us that I know what he's thinking and he knows what I'm thinking, and I'm role-playing that he's a member of this committee. So that can be problematic as well. You really can't use it as an opportunity to express your opinion on if you're going to support a audit or not, because everybody else might see it. So again, the best practice is 2 or more members of the same board should avoid commenting on the same social media post if the post discusses matters related to this particular committee. So you might feel like, wow, all these rules. This is really going to hamper the ability for us to have our meetings and get work done, because that's the whole purpose of this. Our time is valuable. There are a couple exemptions to everything that I've said, but they're far and few. And only those exemptions that are created by the Florida legislature apply. And one example is litigation. In the event that the town were to be sued, there's some hoops we have to jump through, but then we could actually get our town councilors together with the mayor in a room with the attorneys, with the town manager, to discuss litigation strategies and also attorney fees. Because if that were done in the public, the other side knows what our strategy is and knows how much, money this is going to cost the town. So that's one of the exemptions. The other one is collective bargaining. When I don't think we have unions here, so that one really wouldn't come into play. But those are the two, and there might be one or two others in the statute, but they're far and few between. The biggest one that you should kind of be aware of is the litigation, so that one. So we talked about the liaison, we talked about the location of our meeting, adequate size, room's pretty big, and like I said, if there were a lot of people that were coming, we would make accommodations to have perhaps a video screen outside. We cannot discriminate and restrict access to the building. So sometimes some of these committees, advisory boards, would like to have their meeting at a hotel or at a restaurant, more so a restaurant, where a member of the public might feel that, if I go into that restaurant, I need to buy a soda or I need to buy something. So having meetings at restaurants is really discouraged. I know we have been meeting here at the hotel, but I don't think that there have been any facts or any circumstances that would have restricted anyone from coming to those meetings. So videotaping is allowed. If a member of the public comes in with their camera and wants to tape the whole meeting, so be it, as well as the photography. And in 2013, the legislature amended the statute to require public comment, which you do have on your agenda, so we're full compliance here. And that is, again, giving the public the opportunity to respond. The public comment, there are a couple exceptions to that. Sometimes if it's a ministerial act or if there's some kind of emergency, you don't get public comment on those type of matters. However, when you watch the town council meeting, you'll see that the mayor or the vice mayor is handling the meeting. He'll ask any public comment on this item. Moving along. There are guidelines as far as how long the public can speak. Whew, that's a lot, right? So now the question in your mind might be, so what happens if I don't do that? What happens if we close the door? What are the ramifications? So if you knowingly, and that's a key word, because you might inadvertently, that's why we have some training here, violate the sunshine law. So if you're knowingly doing it, knowingly keeping certain people out because they might make testimony that you do not agree with, it is a misdemeanor of the second degree, and that's quite serious. The unintentional can result in a non-criminal infraction with a penalty up to $500.
Just a little quick question. You said close that door. So if it's 30 degrees outside,
Yeah.
that door stays open?
Unlocked.
Okay.
Unlocked. And there's
I'm taking the literal of it.
No, and I appreciate that. No, I agree. And oftentimes there's a sign that's posted. because for whatever reason, I mean, the air conditioner could break, knock on wood that it doesn't, right? And we might have to
Not a concern
relocate.
today.
That's true. We might have to move our meeting to a different room or and hopefully not to a different location. But again, posting notice, because things happen. So yeah, we can close the door and then going forward. So that's really kind of a real quick overview of the Sunshine Law. Again, you know, the appearance is a concern. Again, I like to really advocate for best practices, have that third party kind of hanging around. Somebody who could testify that says, no, they were not talking about something that's going to come before that particular committee. Because, unfortunately, there would be litigation, and that just becomes time-consuming and costly, aggravating for no real reason. Because oftentimes, there's been no violation of the Sunshine Law, but to get to that determination is quite grueling. So my recommendation is avoid, have some risk management, best practices in place, and be aware of it. I do want to talk briefly about public records. So along with the public meeting, everything that we do as part that is town business is a public record. And Florida law gives the public the right to access public records. And the definition of public records is quite broad. Let me read some of them to you. So of course, paper, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software, other materials. So the Florida Supreme Court has given us a little bit more guidance, and it's all materials made or received by, in our situation, a town, in connection with official business, which are used to, and this is key, perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. And it doesn't matter if it's a draft that's been shared. It's a draft, it's not final. It doesn't matter. Drafts are still part of the public record. And there are a number of exemptions to the public records law. Again, the exemption is only there if the legislature put it in there. If there is no exemption, it doesn't apply. And Becky's example is, there is no exemption for this is really embarrassing. You have email that you sent to the clerk or to Joe, and you said something that you really wouldn't want to see on the front page of the newspaper or talked about it at some other venue. Be very, very careful. Emails. Again, some people, you're going to get out an email real quick, and so you may not capitalize things. You may not. You might dictate and the wrong word goes in there. That is a public record if that email is sent, and it's kind of embarrassing in a way if you've got this email that has grammatical errors in it, punctuation, and all that. So remember, there is no exemption for that. However, there are a few, and let me just run through some of them.
Can I pause you just for a moment? You're all going to be using your personal emails, so when she talks about emails, basically a public records request is going to come into my office and it says, I want all Michael's emails from January 1st, 1900 to today. And I'm going to go,
Which is why you don't want her job.
I know.
no, it's like the bane of my existence, public records. But basically, I'm going to reach out to him and say, I've received a public records request for all your emails. And usually there's a little bit more between you and someone or about a subject from 1900 to today. And it's up to you to send them to me. And then I redact out any information that may be needed to be redacted and then send it out.
And here's some examples of some exemptions. So for the law enforcement officers, as you might anticipate their address, their phone number. We don't want people knowing that of our law enforcement officers, but social security numbers, bank accounts, health information. We don't really need to know detailed health information. Active criminal investigations, security systems, you know, that's really important. Bid responses, but only for a limited period of time. There is an exemption again for attorney work product, as you can think about it. You know, if we've got some litigation and it has our strategy in writing, we're not going to disclose that. So we do have that exemption. Again, emails, anything that's on the agency's Facebook page is presumably a public record. Now, what is not a public record, and this is very, very important, notes for your personal use. So today, if you're taking notes of the meeting and you do not share them, you do not perpetuate those words, use them to convey, because those are words of art. You take some personal notes during today's meeting. You're not using them to perpetrate, communicate, or formalize any type of knowledge regarding business, then those are personal to you and they are not public records. They do not need to be disclosed. Those notes might be used to jog your memory and again, not shared. So I think Amy's already kind of jumped ahead a little bit, talked about the process of how do we get public records. She is the official records custodian, and she is she's not authorized to deny a request because of lack of specifics. The example that you gave, he communicates back to you and says, "Oh my gosh, it's 100 pages. Can you charge for that?"
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I can charge for time, anything over, we don't have an official policy, that's one thing I've asked for. Anything over, like normally right now I go 30 minutes. If I have to make paper copies of anything, it's 15 cents a copy. I can charge for that. And it depends on who's pulling the records. I can charge for my time for the work I've done on it. I can charge for Nancy's time if she has to get me records.
Okay, so there's a public records request that wants some numbers, data, in a format, in a different format. Does Joe have to stop everything that he's doing during the day and recalculate those numbers in order to satisfy, or is it just what he has?
It's what you already have. We don't produce records for anybody. We don't make up a record that they've asked for.
Right, and we don't necessarily do their research either, because that often happens where people will be asking questions. Give me this. Well, what about how did that get applied? And you know, we're not required to do that under public records. All we have to give is what we have, and not changing the format. Again, those records we talked about, some are confidential, some are exempt. She's gone through a lot of my slides. I think that is probably the extent of what I wanted to cover. Oh, let's go through penalties. That's always important. So in the event that, by the way, how long do you have to satisfy a public records requirement? You have all week or 2 months or how long?
She's gonna catch me. I don't know the actual answer to that.
Depends.
It depends on what it is, and I try and get them out as soon as possible, but some things I might have to reach out to John for something, and he's on vacation out of the country for 3 weeks. I'm not going to get that record from him. But I do have to respond to the requester in a timely manner, I think is what it says.
Yes, in a timely manner, and what the case law talks about are different lengths of time, you know. We had a devastating storm here in 2022. once we got back into business and there was a public records request. I mean, a lot of records were destroyed. To require it within, a week or a month is completely unreasonable. However, she can't get the public records request and, quote, sit on it. She has to, I'm sure she does it immediately, say, hey, I've got a public records request, this is what I need. And the local government has to show that they are processing that. It can't be denial by delay. That doesn't work for public records. Okay, so what happens if you do delay it? So if you're knowingly withholding public records, you could be subject to suspension, removal, impeachment, but you're also perhaps guilty of a misdemeanor of the first degree, punishable by possible criminal penalties of 1 year in prison or a $1,000 fine or both. And then there's issues regarding attorney fees, which that is in the event that there is litigation. And that's pretty much the extent of what I wanted to share with you today as far as the Sunshine Law and the public records. So does anybody have any questions? I hope you still want to continue to serve on this committee.
Barbara has a question up on the board.
Not so much a question, but a comment. After 20 years on a condo board and having to discuss the Sunshine Law over and over, I love that you brought up social media, and we can't overestimate that. The whole idea of piling on to somebody's opinion just because we agree with them or like them creates a kind of a meeting like you're discussing. So just be really careful of social media. It's running so fast and loose now, and we have many problems just within condo private groups. So we can't overemphasize the changes that the internet and social media brought to the table.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree. And, hitting that like button is really, really easy to do. I mean, we're all kind of friends. We know each other. So I'll leave it at that.
I was just going to say, in your example where you're talking to a fellow committee person, and you do have that third person there to cover yourself, what happens if that third person brings up a topic that...
Well, that third person better know better than to bring that up.
Or a fourth person comes in, I think it's just best at that point to just walk away.
I agree.
And that covers yourself, and it's an easy thing to do.
And we are not the Sunshine Police. I want to emphasize that. As your attorney, we don't go looking for violations, but if we see, two people kind of talking, we might wander over there, and sometimes it's like, here comes the attorney, let's dissipate, They may have something to say about what we're talking about. And I've had officials where I've approached them, and they're like, we're not talking about anything, Nancy. And I'm like, thank you. And I can walk away at that point. So, all right, if there's no other questions, I will then turn the meeting back over to your chair.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Next up is Joe with the final audit results for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022.
Yes, I'm Joe Onzik, Director of Finance, and I'd like to introduce Wade Salisbury, who is from Walden Jenkins, the audit firm that conducted the audit, and he has a presentation for us.
All right, good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen real quick, but before I do, I just want to respond real quick to a question that was posed earlier about the RFP and I guess where that stood. So we responded to the town's your RFP back in August 8th of 2022.
You sit between Joe,
For
because you're the chair.
Sorry,
We're playing musical chairs here.
and 24.
There you go.
And we
So
were
you got your
notified
staff and your
on
attorney.
September
Good.
20th of 2022 of the intent to award. So just some dates and information for y'all on that. All right, let's see. All right, there's my presentation. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go through this pretty briefly, pretty quickly. If y'all have any questions, just feel free to jump right on in. Got a brief agenda here, just some high-level review. First off, just who Malden and Jenkins are. As obviously we gave you an in-depth amount of information for the proposal process last year. We are a large regional audit organization founded in 1918, so we're over 100 years old. We currently do provide professional services to over 700 governmental entities here in the Southeast. We're definitely one of the top firms in the Southeast when it comes to governmental accounting. We do provide all of our clients free continuing professional education. So certainly Joe and his staff are welcome to attend any of those events free of charge. They are typically now, after COVID, done on via Zoom process, not in person anymore. It just makes it easier. And then also anyone on this board, if you all would ever like to attend, you're also more than welcome to do so. And then one thing, just kind of another little feather in our cap, one of our old partners, Joel Black, he and I actually made partners together back in 2005. He was recently appointed the chair of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So the GASB itself, the GASB is the entity that oversees all governmental entities here in the United States. And we're extremely proud of the fact that one of our ex-partners is now leading that overall organization. All right, then just jump right into the statements themselves. Obviously, this is for September 30th of 2022. We've issued an unmodified audit opinion. This is the type of opinion that you all wish to receive each and every year. In our opinion, the financial statements are considered to present fairly the financial position of the town as of and for the year ended September 30th, 2022. Clearly, you all had a significant event right there at the end of the year, which delayed the overall audit process. But I'm extremely proud of what the town was able to accomplish. And even though we issued the opinion back in October of this year, I've been doing governmental accounting now for almost 30 years. I've had many clients that have had delays and have needed extensions and weren't able to get things done on time. But no one has anywhere close to the reason that you all did with Hurricane Ian. And actually, I won't name names, but you all actually beat another one of my clients that had no impact of the storm in getting your audit out. So, and just hats off to the staff that's there, the staff that was there that's left. We had no findings this year. We had 3, I believe, for 2021. All of those were cleaned up, all of those were rectified. So again, a really good overall year. I was very impressed with how the audit went and how smoothly it all went once we were able to finally get in there and start doing the work. This year we did also have to perform 2 single audits, one on the federal side as well as one on the state side. This was really over your federal drinking water program and your state SRF program. Again, no findings or issues there as well. The overall net position of the town did decrease by about 5.6 million, down to a total of about 56.8 million, and this is the town as a whole. Clearly, a large portion of that decrease was related to Hurricane Ian. You know, a significant amount of damage was done, a significant amount of the town's assets were lost, and I believe the overall recording of that was about almost $11 million of value that was taken off of your balance sheet at year end as a result of the storm. So without that, you actually would have had a really good overall year. General fund specifically, this table just kind of shows you where the money comes from. Obviously property taxes, utility taxes, those are all large components. Charges for services as well of your overall revenue stream in the general fund. Then this chart shows the overall expenditures, where those revenues are going. A lot of that's going to general government, culture and recreation, and some transportation, all things that I would expect to see for the town of Fort Myers Beach. 5-year fund balance history of the town, you can actually see we've seen some good gradual growth. And again, you know, this is as of 9/30/2022. The storm was just a couple of days before year end. I do expect to potentially see a dip going forward, but this is what it was as of 9/30/2022. Then when we look at your enterprise funds, I always want to make sure that you all are charging adequate fees for your cost of operations. This chart shows that both for your water and sewer as well as your stormwater, that you are indeed charging the appropriate cost to cover your cost of operations. Here's just a comparison of those operating revenues from 22 to 2021. So both funds saw a pretty good little increase over the prior year. And then the same with operating expenses, also a slight increase, but again, the overall net was a positive operating inflows. Then I've got just some statistics here, some high-level statistics, 22 as well as 2021. Spending per resident are about $2,800 in 22, about $1,700 in 2021. I believe that's mostly in relation to the fact that the town expanded quite a bit last year or in 2022 on capital improvements, on capital projects. So that's the ultimate reason for the overall increase. As we mentioned already, the general fund had a good increase from the prior year, about 12.5%. The overall debt per resident sits right at about $7,300. In 2021, it was just a little under that, about $7,100. Clearly, the town is still undergoing a large water and sewer stormwater project, and all that's being financed through SRF loan funding through the state. At the end of the year, we had about 82 employees in 22, about 79 in 21. Average employee salary is about $52,000, and the overall percentage of general fund budget is spent on salaries and benefits that relates to about 50% of the overall budget. Those are comparable again for 2021. And that's all that I have for the presentation. Of course, there's also what we call our AD&A, our auditor's discussion and analysis. Within the statements themselves is the MD&A, the management's discussion and analysis. I always recommend that all boards and everyone interested in the city's or the town's finances read the MD&A because it's written from the management's perspective. It gives you a little bit of information on, you know, why something went up from 21 to 22 or went down, and vice versa. So there's a lot of good information there. But in our AD&A, we give you all of our required communications in a written format. If we had any findings or recommendations, those will be listed there. We also list out any and all of the upcoming GASB statements that may affect the town in the future. All of that's for your information. And that's again really all I had for you all specifically today. Do you all have any questions that I can help answer?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Wade, I appreciate that AD&A report. That was very helpful to me. But on page 11 there, we all have that report. You made, Marlon and Jenkins, or you representing them, made a comment about our records. And we heard it again today as part of the sunshine law discussion. You asked us you suggest to us that the town implement a record storage system that will remain protected even in the event of a natural disaster like we had. So, to the town employees, excuse my ignorance, but it sounds like we don't have an adequate system now. Is it appropriate for this board to suggest it to council to make a motion to just take a look at this, a recommendation? Seems to me we've had the same problem in the condos where records just disappeared. So that's my comment. Well, should we do something at this point? Or should we just recommend it to council?
Well, before you all discuss it, I just want to give a little bit of context with this particular item. And it is a management recommendation. Clearly, Town Hall was completely destroyed by the storm. As part of our overall audit, we do a purely random selection of overall disbursements of the town. And I think we select anywhere from 25 to 60 different disbursements. And there were a couple that the underlying invoices and overall documentation was not able to be provided. They weren't able to find it. And it was all literally because of the storm. Certainly nothing that was concerning to us, certainly nothing that was of a significance that would cause any kind of opinion modification or even an adjustment. Ultimately, we were able to review other information to determine that those transactions were properly recorded as part of our testing. But because of the fact that the storm did do so much damage, we just wanted to put this out there just so that you all are aware of it, and that all of your data, whether it's electronic or paper format, you just want to do all you can to make sure you keep that information, you keep control of it, and even if another storm, heaven forbid, comes and hits the town again, that it will be in safe hands. So that's really all that we were trying to say there. Not that there was a problem, not that there was a huge issue, but just that there were a couple of documents that were not able to be located during the audit process.
So I guess I defer to our chairman. Do you think we ought to do something or recommend something, or is it enough that Joe's hearing this? Joe, you could answer that.
Well, it certainly is a concern. I know one of the issues is basically keeping up with scanning the data that we have. And I think what happened, as best as I can understand it, there were just some items that were probably sitting on someone's desk that still needed to be scanned, and then the hurricane hit. So I think that was more the issue. And we're very diligent about scanning our documentation now so that we do have electronic copies of it. Probably a more sophisticated system at some point down the road might be more helpful in actually organizing the data. But we're doing the best we can now to make sure we do have electronic records of what we have.
Okay, so
is doing the best we can satisfying the public records requests. We just heard so much about it during that Sunshine Law and Records discussion. That's all. I'm just raising the thought.
Taking that a step further, it sounds like you have a scanning process in place. Sounds like, is that to the cloud or is that local storage?
It's both.
Okay. What's in the current accounting system that you had in place as of September 30th, 2022, was that local storage or was that an on-premise solution or was that a cloud solution?
I understand it's a cloud solution.
Okay, so you were able to retrieve those records from that in order to be able to create the financial statements?
Yes.
Okay.
As liaison to the council, I would just say, Barbara, to answer your question, it is in this committee's purview to be able to make that recommendation. At least that's my belief.
So in that particular case, do we ask for a motion?
Yes.
Is there a motion to make the recommendation for storage process and systems?
So
I'd make the motion exactly the way Malden and Jenkins suggested on page 11, that the town implement a record storage system that will remain protected in the event of a natural disaster.
Is there a second to that motion?
I would say that, didn't your note say you wanted to get a new accounting system?
do you want a second for discussion purposes?
Just to talk about it.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we do need a new accounting system, one that would be more robust, much easier to use.
Yeah, so Roger, the guy that was here prior to the new guy, he was hell-bent on buying his own system, and I was asking him, why don't we get a finance director and have that person buy it? And I got shut down, so I didn't say it again, but we could incorporate the management on the documents if we would just have a good system so we could kind of killed two birds with one stone.
Yeah, so
I just want to clarify for the stenographer, I guess, that the motion was by Barbara Puffer and the second was by Michael Hauser.
Let me ask a question maybe a little bit differently. Do you want to restate that as part of an overall ERP financial system?
Right.
That M&J's suggestion of a document retention system be included in that?
I was just thinking if you get a good digital cloud-based accounting system, it should probably be incorporated in that. And, you know, the least number of moving parts, the better, I would think. But I don't know if that's how government works.
I would.
And Joe, you're saying that's already happening.
Well, no, it's
So
not.
this is redundant?
No,
No, when you say this is already happening, do you mean are we in the process of obtaining a new system, or
Yes.
did you?
Yes.
Yes. Well, no, it's on the list of things to do. We've not yet begun that process, but that is certainly one of the a major things that we need to accomplish.
Wasn't the motion more to investigate a way to do this instead of actually implement it? I mean, first you need to investigate it, understand options and whatnot, and then implement it.
agreed.
I would just say, having been in an organization where every record did blow away and wasn't properly done, that we can spend time investigating when we already know what needs to be done. I think that's why our auditors recommended that we implement a record storage system.
I'm suggesting investigating options. I mean, there's 100 of them out there. You know, let's investigate options. What are the best first?
The selection process for an ERP and document retention systems to both accurately collect, track, and report data and store data.
I agree.
Are you saying that you'd like me to amend my motion to say that?
Yes, please.
So I don't know if I can repeat it exactly like you did. We might recommend that the town investigate and implement a financial system that includes record storage.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree.
I'll second that.
Protected even in the event of a natural disaster.
There you go. I'll second that. It's Debbie.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion, it was unanimous, and it's passing.
Now how does it work from here? Who does that?
The chair would take it to the council and advise
Okay.
a report of this committee.
I have one more thing that would take a lot less discussion. If nobody else, I don't want to monopolize this, but on page 21 of your report, Wade, you list a whole lot of topics about for your newsletters. I know for me anyway, it would be helpful if when Joe or staff receives these newsletters, that if there's one that's useful to us, that they might forward it to the committee. For example, I remember a lot of discussion when we had multiple bidders on audit. There was one topic you listed that was rotating or not rotating auditors. So there are several topics on here that might be of particular interest to us as a group that maybe Joe or staff could share as we go along. That's all, just a comment.
Any other comments? Moving to the next item, which is the selection of auditors for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023. In this particular case, I'm assuming we're recommending to continue with M&J.
I agree.
So Michael, will you make a motion?
Motion to keep the same auditors for next season.
I second.
And it's
Mary Ann.
Mary Ann. I have it written down, I was just making sure. So Mary Ann just seconds it, all in favor?
Go ahead.
Aye. That's unanimous to keep M&J for year ending September 30th, 2023. Next up is Joe with the Finance Director report.
This is Nancy. May I interject just for a moment? Just for the record, there's no members of the public that were here to make any comments regarding any of the agenda items. So, ready for Joe.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did I miss it that there was a motion to accept the audit report? Has that already been handled, or I think we also need to have the committee,
Yes.
that was already done?
No.
I don't know. I
I don't think
apologize.
so.
No, we did not do that.
I didn't actually see it on the agenda, Joe, so.
I'm sorry, probably should have specified that, but that would be part of the final audit results, is that the committee would vote on accepting them. And
Unfortunately, I'm not ready to do that. I'd like to have a conversation about that, and I'm waiting for your finance report to ask a few questions about that.
okay, all right. So I prepared for you a written report, and I don't want to insult you by just reading it, but I'll just try to mention some of the highlights that I think were important. And obviously, we had the catastrophic damage from the hurricane, and so that did, as Wade explained, that did cause the delay in our really working on it, since the resources and time was taken up by just dealing with the emergency situation. And just in regards to that, I just want to really compliment the staff that I came into. I started in March, and I had heard the horrible conditions that they had to work in. They started their first day back after the hurricane. There was no electricity, no power. There's no shelter. There were no bathrooms. There was nothing. But they all showed up, and they continued to do the job as best as they can in those circumstances. And of course, it unfolded from there to temporary trailers, and now where they're at in the town hall. So it's been a very difficult road, but yet they were maintaining their professionalism, and they worked very hard at with the FEMA support, administrative support that was provided by state, early alert, and then tidal basin, in making sure that we were collecting the documentation that was necessary for FEMA reimbursement, and that our contracts were eventually put into a language that would be acceptable by FEMA for reimbursement as well. So they did a lot of that work before I even got here. Let's see, just some of what I'm sharing with you, I know is not necessarily what your purview as an audit committee, but I just think it's important that you understand where we've come since the hurricane, so you understand where things are financially. We did collect so far $9.5 million of insurance proceeds. There's also an insurance adjuster that was contracted by the former interim town manager, who's working on obtaining more reimbursement. And we also have $11.2 million of FEMA reimbursements collected so far. Some of that was an upfront payment by FEMA, which really helped us in all the initial expenditures that we had to undergo. I did have to prepare a report for the mayor, who was giving this to the committee of the state legislature, I believe today. So I took some of this information from his report that I prepared. So some of this is not new, it was also part of the budget presentation. But we did lose $2.8 billion of taxable value because of the catastrophic destruction. And of course, that will impact next year's tax revenue, the ad valorem tax revenue that will be collected, and that will be down about $1.8 million in this fiscal year. In 2023, we're estimating about $3 million of our revenue was lost as a result of the destruction, and we're projecting $4.5 million to be lost in 2024. And that jump up from $3 million to $4.5 million is primarily because of that loss of ad valorem tax. Okay, then, as was mentioned, capital assets were certainly destroyed or impaired. And my calculations here are just based on the actual book value before taking into consideration consideration depreciation. So you can see more specifically that's 39% of our buildings, 13% of infrastructure, 65% of vehicles and equipment, 76% of office furniture, computers. So overall it's a 21% reduction in lost value of our assets. The net book value loss, after taking into consideration depreciation, is about $11 million. What we were able to utilize to pay for all of that were the FEMA reimbursements and the insurance proceeds. We also did receive a $500,000 donation from Volunteer Florida with the governor and his wife for Bayside Park. We had donations of things like sod from Scott's Turf Corporation for the Little League field. We had bathroom fixtures from Kohler. So there's been a handful of donations that have come in as well. The town was awarded an $11.9 million bridge loan from the state to cover operating expenditures only. So we have that in our bank. We've not drawn against it yet. We did plan on using $3.5 million of it to balance this year's budget. But hopefully if things do better than expected, we won't need to touch that. We're trying to avoid using that because there is a 10% interest fee that will begin in June, or just like July 1st on any unpaid balance. And beyond that, the requirements to repay the loan are based on our ability to do so. There's no set payment requirement. The town was also awarded a $5 million loan that we can use for eligible specific FEMA Public Works projects at a 0% interest rate. That'll be coming to the town any day now. It's just been approved by town council, and then we'll only be able to draw on it for the projects that were pre-approved by the state. And these are a list of FEMA projects that are on the portal for FEMA. We also have a $10 million capital loan that was entered into by the town well before the hurricane, and it was for the projects in Times Square, for Bayside Park, and for the Oaks Rec Center. That loan period to draw down would have expired in November, but we've extended it. The bank allowed us to extend it through May 1st. I'm not sure how much more related to those projects we'll be able to draw down, but at least it's there available for whatever we can do. Also, I just wanted to note for the fiscal year 24 budget, that is a copy of it's included in the back of your binder. The millage rate remained the same as the previous year, 0.99. However, because of the 42% loss of taxable value, it results in about the same loss in ad valorem tax revenue. So even though it's the same millage rate, the underlying taxable value will result in a reduction in the tax revenue. And as I mentioned, about $3.5 million of reduced revenue is expected to be funded by the bridge loan. We also are drawing down from the ARPA fund to pay for some of the increase in expenses. And the reason for that is beside a reduction in revenue, we did have an increase in expenditures. And primarily, I would say, is due to the increase in personnel that was necessary to just support the town in its recovery efforts. And so we're using ARPA funding for some of that, and there was also $500,000 that had been moved into capital the previous year, specifically for Estero Boulevard lighting, that it is now, turns out we'll have an alternate funding source, so that's being moved back in. So those are some of the big picture pieces of the puzzle for the budget for 2024. And of course, the whole document is there for your analysis. I also wanted to just give you a brief summary of where we stand cash-wise as of the end of November. We have $40 million there. The bridge loan, we have, even though it was only for $11.9 million, because of the interest accumulated, we have $12,148,000 there in that account. We do have the ARPA funds also included in there, and a significant portion of that is in capital, as well as some of the other capital project accounts, and this also includes dollars that are in our proprietary funds for water, stormwater. So that's our total cash basis. So cash-wise, we're doing okay, although where it's out earmarked, that's starting to become a concern. We do have some certificates of deposit that one has just renewed. I have not really done anything in terms of investments because we're earning such a high interest rate in our bank accounts, and I was not exactly sure what to do with these certificates of investment, of deposit, and I did not even have access to them until recently. And we do have some investments with the Florida Municipal League. These are long-time investments that have been there a while. They're not earning very much as in the intermediate, high-quality bond funds, but we do have that, and they've been there quite a while, from what I understand. Fiscal year 23, I did also attach a balance sheet. It's my own version of a preliminary balance sheet, just to give you an idea of where we stand at the end of 2023. There is a reduction. Let's see. Let's get a little bit low here. I did want to explain that the reduction in general fund expenditures was the result of so much, even though our expenditures overall had increased because of the emergency, because they were more of an emergency nature, what would have been normally charged to the general fund was able to be charged to the emergency fund, and that's what resulted in the decrease in expenditures, which coincided with the decrease in revenue, which in the end we did, revenues did exceed expenditures for 2023. For personnel update, of course, I'm the new Director of Finance. I started in the spring. Our budget director, Sherry Russ, was in place, as you know from before. Our previous accounting manager is no longer with the town. Linda Beck, who had been the senior staff accountant, who was hired just before the storm, was promoted to our accounting manager. She's sitting here behind me. Accounts receivable clerk and was new also since the summer, and our accounts payable clerk is the one who's been here for a while now. And we have a vacancy for a senior accountant, although we did extend an offer. Hopefully that person will come on board and will be able to help us with helping to, there's so much that needs to be done, and hopefully then having another strong person, CPA level person, will be able to help with the researching and the establishment of policies and procedures that we have. Payroll process, or utility billing, that was just, a decision was just made to put the billing portion, customer service portion, under the oversight of finance. We think that will be important in making sure that their policies and procedures are in alignment with our own. It's just more of a natural fit, I think, and then we'll also be able to cross-train and provide some support for them as well. Payroll processing, HR did spearhead the conversion from Paychex to iSolve. It seems to be a better solution than Paychex, and we're still working through it. It just happened a few weeks ago. So far it went very well. And then the responsibility of payroll processing will transition from HR to finance once we're fully staffed in the finance department. And then as far as looking ahead at what I'm concerned about, I think one of the major things we really need to get a really tight control over would be procurement. We're doing a fairly good job with that, but it's not, I think because of the transition, it's not really settled in its final home yet. It had been under the clerk's office, and it was going to get moved to finance, and we hired a procurement person, and that person was promoted to a different position. And so there's just a lot of change over there, and I think we really need to get that stabilized, especially going forward, because we were operating in an emergency state for quite a while where we didn't have to be as careful about putting things out to bid as we do going forward. And so we want to make sure that those processes are in place and that we follow everything, that we strictly adhere to those procedures. I think one of the challenges now, we've had such a, as you can see, there's $20 million of emergency expenditure so far. We really, our tidal basin has been really our lifesaver in helping to review all those expenditures and collect them and document them and place them on the FEMA portal for us. So they're already making sure that all of our expenditures are documented, not just in case there's an audit for FEMA, but the way it is now, we're able to upload all those documents today in anticipation of an audit in the future. So it's all there, ready to go, audit ready, audit proof. So they've been instrumental in that, and we just need to be able to come alongside them and eventually have that transition to us so we can keep that going forward. And that's where I think we need another person on staff to help us. I don't mean in addition, but I mean filling that vacancy would be very important for us.
Is Tidal Basin a consultant?
Yes, they're a
Okay.
consultant. So they've been excellent in helping us with FEMA. And then we also need to review our financial policies and procedures. We have them, it's just I think we need to give them a good review and formalize them more so than they already are. And then as I was included, we already discussed, we do need a much better accounting system than what we have. It's very difficult to get information out. It's a standard software system. It was designed for nonprofit companies, organizations, I should say. It works for government, but it's just very, very difficult to pull information out of it. And I think having a new system that would be more user-friendly, more intuitive, more easily able to pull information out for reporting purposes, as well as to store data. Like for example, when we receive cash receipts, and we're recording cash receipts, to upload the data related in the documentation to cash receipts. Same thing with payables, attach all that to the invoices that are in the system rather than separately stored where we have to separately look for things. I think having an integrated system would really help us.
So do you have a process or an approach on how you're going to go out? Do you have a couple of vendors in mind that you've already looked at?
Not yet. Honestly, I mean, as important as it is, it has taken so much time, all of my time really, to really figure out what went on in 2022, to clean up the processes there. At the same time, trying to put the budget together for 2024 and then dealing with all the emergency expenditures in 2023 and FEMA and grants applications and all the rest. There just hasn't been the capacity to look, but that is so important because every day we're dealing with the struggle with.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I've already been through this process with another municipality, same thing. And the director that was in charge there, she was fantastic, and I can actually give you her contact information. She went out to the neighboring communities, so what is it, Sanibel, Naples, Fort Myers, find out basically she formed a group of other finance directors of the other municipalities. They got together and figured out what the best solution was, and I don't remember what the name of the company was, but that was probably like 8 years ago, and I ran into her about a year ago. She said it's still working great.
That's good to know.
So, but if you get buy-in from the other groups, plus you're all, if it's and then the other thing is we checked with the auditors, see if they had a preferred solution that is easier to interface with their system. But I agree with you. And it's, this one is cloud-based, so you don't have the storage issues and all the other stuff. So if I can help with that process, I'm a resource, I guess.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
But I don't want to violate any sunshine laws. I mean, I'm serious though. Is that like a problem to do that?
not to
No,
Joe.
no, if the concurrence of the committee to delegate that task to you is fine.
Well, I don't want to be delegated. I mean, I don't want to do the whole thing.
So after you've nominated me as finance chair, I'm more than happy to delegate.
Your communication would only be with Joe.
All right, okay.
You would not
All right.
really, I would recommend that you don't copy everybody else. Again, it's one-way communication, so you don't respond back. Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
It's a great idea.
yeah,
Thank you.
save time, right?
Absolutely. So I think that concludes my report, that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I've got several. And I guess first up is like, you know, the audit that we're talking about today, is that FY '22 or
Yes.
FY '23?
22.
Because looking at the notes that came out from the previous year, from all of '22, that fiscal year, there were multiple conversations about the software system, about the reporting, about the continuation of issues and errors with accounts receivable, accounts payable, and others that were in there. So I'm assuming that as of September 30th, 2022, those still existed.
No, I think there's maybe a misunderstanding. So 2022, that is the year in which it was all cleaned up, and we have a clean audit opinion, and there's no findings.
But then why did you have to spend so much time reconciling, cleaning up, and going through
Oh.
during your time here?
Well, I mean, that was part of it, was I don't know that the record keep, or the transactions were necessarily properly recorded.
Well, then that would be a material weakness based on what previously occurred in 20 and 21.
But that's what we were cleaning up, that's what we were
But then you
doing.
did that after September 30th of 2022. That's why I'm asking, is this a compilation? Is this, you know, when was the actual, if you struck that line on September 30th of 2022, and we went back and we looked, you had you had balances, you had transactions that were incorrectly coded, incorrectly accounted for, that you had to clean up during that period of time. That's what I've read, that's what I've heard.
I'm just trying to think if maybe I'm not phrasing it correctly.
I read it too, and my understanding was those were weaknesses that were found in 2021 or 2020. I don't remember
Both.
what year it was. But then, if you read the whole thing, they said that it was fixed. The CPA firm said all the internal, is that what we were talking
What
about?
I'm trying to figure out is, was it fixed as of September 30th, or was it fixed after Joe came in?
It's fixed now,
and
is
worked-
basically what I understand.
That's where I'm kind of getting to.
Yeah.
Maybe to clarify, I think where some of the issues, maybe most of the issues were in all of the year-end adjustments that are part of a normal year-end close, and all the accruals and all of those things that normally take place. In the past, they weren't necessarily done properly. So this year for 2022, when we were working on doing all of those accruals and analyzing the accounts and analyzing the balance sheet accounts, and preparing those reconciliations, we were able to create the adjustments correctly, whereas those year-end adjustments were not handled necessarily correctly or as well as they should have been in the previous year. So it's that year-end close process that was different, I think, than the previous year. That's where.
Okay, I'm still kind of like as of September 30th, I think you had a problem.
Over a year ago.
Yeah,
Well,
and maybe you've corrected that problem since, but just coming in and saying as of September 30th, everything was clean, I would disagree.
well, I think possibly, are you thinking that as of September 30th, everything should be recorded at that point? That needs to be recorded?
If I go back
'Cause
and I look at, this is 2020, this is 2021, and the material weaknesses that were recorded in 2021 that rolled over from 2020 were related to accounts receivable and the internal controls that were in place there. The proprietary funds for capital assets, the accounts payable, and so those were ones that were sitting there as of 2021. And throughout the year, reading the minutes of the meetings, the audit committee meetings, they continued to talk about those particular issues as still being persistent and still being in place. So that's where my point's coming from.
I can't speak to that since I wasn't here, but I didn't see that type of evidence in what I was looking at. It was what we focused our attention on and all the work on was on all the year-end adjustments.
Okay.
So that's what I did.
If you look at page 60, I might not be understanding your question, but the only thing that I saw was the internal controls, and there was 3 of them. And every single one of them says that they were all 3 resolved. Is that not what you guys are reading?
And what I'm trying to figure out was as of September 30th, or was it post-September 30th, as you put in new processes?
It looks like it looks like the weaknesses were found in 2021, and there was 3 of them, and they were all resolved by the end of this audit, is basically my understanding of it.
Right. And also, I mean, and I don't know, but there was a new accounting manager who was working, and like her primary responsibility, I was told, was to make sure that everything was addressed that was in those weaknesses. So I know she was working on that through the year, but she was already gone by the time I came on board in March.
Okay.
So she probably addressed those if it was anything that had to do with what was taking place during the year.
Okay. I'll buy into that, and just to make sure that we have that in place today, I think the ERP system will also help you in that as to proper configuration, requirements, configuration, etc. So you talked about resources, or the utility billing, and you talked about payroll, and then there was another one that we talked about through there. What's your overall lift as far as additional staffing for that particular area, covering those areas?
Well, we have just our current list here. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, including myself. So we're not looking for any additional staffing. This would be the group that, is that what you're asking? Like,
yeah, so when you take on utility billing, you're going to take on customer service and take my phone calls?
well, no, okay, I see what you're saying. No, there are already, well, it would be 2 employees who are in utility billing, so they would be added. I don't have them.
Okay, and then the payroll side of it, somebody's already running payroll?
Well, it's the HR department is running payroll, they're processing payroll, so then the senior accountant, I don't know whether it would be that person specifically, but once that vacancy is filled, we'll have some capacity to do the payroll processing then as well.
Okay.
So HR will go down a person?
No, that's not their plan.
All right, and then kind of going to your conversation around revenue and expenditures, looking kind of forward over the next 9 months till we get to September 30th, 24. What's the current projection? What do we think? What's the current projection as far as solvency of the town?
Well, I'm concerned about the fact that we are having a reduction in revenue, but that's what the bridge loan is for. That's why we have it. That's why it was built into the budget to utilize it. We're hoping that things will be better than what we're planning for, but I think it's going to take several years to move to the point where our revenues are back on track. And there's a lot of optimism in that regard, especially like with new properties coming online for tax revenues. With Margaritaville opening, there's lot of optimism there. We didn't really build that optimism into the forecast. I mean, so I don't think things will be worse than what we're projecting. I think they're going to be much better, but planning for the worst case scenario is how we budgeted. And so we're planning to use that bridge loan. And like, there's no set repayment period, and in fact, there's a lot of lobbying that loan be forgiven, but that we're not planning on that, but there's that aspect too. So our repayment of that loan is only based on our ability to repay. So we'll never, in terms of that loan, find ourselves in a situation where we're going to be defaulting or any situation like that. So I think I'm optimistic in that regard. Where I'm concerned is moving forward with our capital projects. It is just the cash flow, making sure that there's cash coming in, our reimbursements are coming in time to pay the new expenditures going out, because almost everything is on a reimbursement basis. So you have to put the cash out first before you get the cash, and then there's that delay in between. So we do have this $5 million loan that is supposed to help with that. But there again, that'll help us make the expenditures first, and then the loan itself is repaid by the reimbursements. So it's not like we'll end up with any extra dollars on hand to use, because we have to pay it back immediately as soon as the reimbursement comes. So there's going to take some, I think, very focused effort in managing cash going forward, which is what I'll be switching gears to as we move forward in these next few weeks.
Okay. You also talked about.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Is there anything talking about reducing spending? I understand there's going to be capital spending, but just ongoing operational spending. I mean, we don't need as many services. There aren't as many people here.
That is probably, I'm not the best person to be able to answer that question, I think, because I'm not as much in tune with the operational needs. I mean, and the budget was put together by all the department heads and the town manager in terms of what they foresaw as being needed to restore the town. So even though maybe we're not providing the same types of services currently, I mean, even that's probably a difficult statement to make, because I don't really know how it's changed on a day-to-day. From my perspective, I don't know. But I think there is such a tremendous effort in terms of restoring the town. And it's the focus of that is really, I think, draining our resources in terms of personnel. So I don't know that we have like people that are underutilized because of lesser services. I think it's the opposite. I think they're overextended. And that's what we're kind of struggling with.
I guess I only have 2 questions left, or maybe when you talk about managing that cash flow, you also talked about maintaining like a portfolio management process for all the different projects going on.
Yes.
Is that part of that?
That's part of what I want to develop, because we have pieces of the puzzle in various areas. I want to pull them all together so that, I mean, my simple vision is like, here's the list of all the projects, and then and the lines, and then the columns are the different funding sources, and then start plugging in what needs to be plugged in so that as each project is fully funded, then you can see what's left of those funding sources, and then just manage that moving forward. And as far as when we'll be reimbursed on that, so it's complex.
Yes.
And it's not. It's going to take quite a bit of my time to really get my arms fully around that.
Yes, I think that's a great idea, by the way. And I've kind of lost the second thing that I had a question about. But there was currently talk of the town not foreclosing, but tearing down derelict properties. There's been letters that have been sent out to property owners with the request for them to clean up. if they don't clean up, there's been talk about the town going in to tear those down and remove that. Is any of that included in the current budget?
I don't think so. That was never part of those discussions. And honestly, I don't know where
Okay.
that funding would come from, or even whose expense it would actually end up being, but I'm not aware.
It's almost a long legal process because
It's
liens
the
would then
main-
have to be
Correct,
placed.
to
and that's-
recover it.
To recover, yes.
Okay, any other questions?
I can elaborate a little bit on the abatement process if it's helpful. You know. But basically, you know, there has to be a finding that there's a violation, and rather than the property owner coming into compliance with the property, it's the town that would move forward. And the fact that the town would be expending money is a benefit to the property, so it would have to go through the process, as Counselor mentioned. But we would have like priority over other liens and things that might be accruing equal in dignity to taxes. But there is a process to recover that money. It would not be readily available.
Okay. Okay, so next up, I guess, is the finalization of the audit results for fiscal year in September 30th of 2022. And is there a motion to approve those?
I'll move it.
That was Barbara
Yeah.
approved it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jack seconds it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous approval, so the audit finding is good. Then how does that move to town council?
There'll be a resolution that we'll put together for the town council meeting, and then I believe you as the chair of the finance committee would probably address the town council and recommend that they,
Do you want that on the 18th agenda or?
as soon as I can have it arranged to be on the agenda, if that's, I don't know if it's time to meet that deadline, but yes, that would be good.
I believe the deadline for the 18th is Wednesday,
Okay.
so that's 2 days.
Okay, well, it's easy enough to put a resolution like that together.
So would you have time on Monday, the 18th, after 9?
Yeah.
There's on the agenda, there's a section for committee reports, and that's where you would be called on to give that.
Okay. So then I have two things I've noted down, final audit result and the report of the committee on the ERP and data retention recommendation.
And then there would also be
Picked
a
a good chairman.
resolution for the renewal of the engagement
Oh, yes.
of Melvin and Jenkins, so that would be a separate resolution that we could put on there.
Okay. So the recommendation, I'm almost thinking maybe that can go on consent.
Sure.
If it's a town decision,
Mhm.
but it would be nice to have it after the recommendation.
Okay. So you'll draft 3? Or how does that work? I'm sorry, I'm ignorant.
I think we're all learning.
Two for sure, one for the authorization to engage Malden and Jenkins, and then one to accept the audit report. As far as the recommendation for an ERP, I don't know if we need a resolution for to move forward with
The request for the informational systems?
yes.
No, I think that's just going to be, a recommendation that's
From the
provided
committee.
by the chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably not until you actually choose something.
Right. So oftentimes, resolutions are basically representation, memorialization of the official act of the town, somewhat temporary in nature, approval of a contract. But oftentimes, sometimes for funding purposes, you have to have a resolution done. So and this is an issue that came up internally, is that sometimes some cities, for every contract, they will do a resolution, other cities don't. And does that mean the contract is not valid? No, it's still a valid contract. So it's just kind of an administrative thing as to when you do one, when you don't.
Okay. All right, so I'll be prepared. I assume he can contact me with the information so I can read and be prepared with it?
Yes,
Okay, cool. You have my email address?
I do.
Okay, great. And then, so with that being said, we move to member items and reports.
So I have a quick question. Having heard our sunshine discussion, what about other members of the committee? If you showed up at the town council meeting, would you be able to say anything
I'm going to be out
concerning
of
his
town.
comments?
It's my birthday, I'm out of town.
Okay, so you're innocent. You're
I'm off the
innocent.
hook.
The answer is no, because then we have two members commenting on his presentation, and it's foreseeable that it's an audit-related topic, that it may come back to this committee, so you may have some communication exchange. Does that mean you can't go to the meeting? You can go to the meeting, you can watch the meeting on video, but you should not have any interaction with your chair.
I'll text him during the meeting.
Right.
Okay, so then maybe one point. When do we get the notes back from this meeting? You said you had somebody transcribing it?
That's going through the clerk. I really don't know.
Okay.
Joe, I don't know if you know.
It's usually the next meeting, isn't it? I think you just show up and you just
Yeah.
look.
It's in the packet,
I thought so,
generally,
yeah.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I got that particular
The
piece.
video. Oftentimes when we have meetings like this, I mean, I take notes, you take notes, our personal notes, but we always go back and watch the video,
Okay.
and then the video will fill in those gaps.
And that's available on YouTube at the town's
Yeah,
website.
Okay, cool.
Town's YouTube section, I guess. or-
yeah.
Got it. All right, so then after that, with no meeting items and reports, we go to our next meeting. Do we want to establish a regular cadence going forward?
It'd be up to you if you.
I mean, I think previously it was like the second Monday of each month. Is that correct?
I don't know what we really do other than pick the auditor. That's kind of the, I mean, I'll show up if we, unless there's an agenda.
I feel like we should have a better understanding of the finance processes and occasionally having the finance team come and say, well, this is the kinds of things we did with our, you created new procedures or something, different ways that you've tightened your internal controls and things like that would contribute to a good audit, basically. I mean, I came from Ford Motor Company, and that's what we did. We talked to the audit committee. We internal control and general auditor's office went to the audit committee every month. It doesn't need to be every month.
What do you recommend?
I think in addition to that, the other one is the ERP system and the progress on that. So that's got some pretty big heavy weights to it.
Yep.
So maybe set it for let's set it for the second Monday, if we can do that.
January.
January.
Sure.
And if I may, and then you can provide an update as well when you make your presentation to town council.
Okay.
You can update your audit committee as to how that went.
And at that point, wouldn't the audit have kicked off too for 2023?
It should be starting by.
So maybe we get an update on that.
Sure.
I mean, there's all kinds of different things we talk about.
Okay.
Okay. So now where are we?
Motion perhaps to adjourn if there's no other comments from the committee or there's nobody here from the public as well.
So looking for a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Jack is making the motion to adjourn, second, and Michael, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yes.
Can I just leave this here?
Yeah, Joe, we generally